Okay, good morning, everybody. I'd like to get started. We're going to get started. Just make sure you can hear me. Can somebody give me a thumbs up? Got it. Thank you, Mark, for that. Just want to make sure we're okay on that. And I'll start with the opening remarks. Dick couldn't be with us today. He had another obligation, so it's me doing opening remarks for this one. And I think I'd like to start by just talking about how much we've done in the last year, despite the pandemic. Our programs, we'll talk about our programs in a bit. Mark is going to give an overview of education, and then Natalie's going to talk about the partnership and all of that. But I think the thing that I really would like to emphasize is how much we've done in creating a single organization from out of the foundation. It was always operated kind of with two different organizations, one that operated out of the museum office and did a lot of the programs and things like that. And then there was the project. The project was a separate entity, and really bringing those together was critical. Probably the most important thing that we did as part of that is really did a look at our finances and how we captured that. We were not set up as a regular nonprofit from a financial point of view. And that's important because for charity ratings and things like that, you have to have it set up so you have fundraising, general administrative, and then programs. And you want to see most of your funding going to programs. So we went through an arduous process in the last summer, I'd say the summer before. Our accountants, Sandy Feely, Bill Sadi, and I sat down and restructured the entire financial system for the foundation and set it all up in QuickBooks that way, and started us with QuickBooks Online, and really looked at how we spend our money, including our time. So our time would be booked appropriately. And then after that, then we went into actually doing all of our electronic bill pay and everything. And so we are so far from where we were just a year ago. And I think in the end, it will pay off because from an auditor point of view, it makes it easier for the auditors, and also for us, for our charity ratings in the future, it will help us because it will really show that the money that is being applied to programs is going to programs. A lot of it was shown up as fundraising in the past, which was confusing, but anyway, so hopefully in the future that will be done appropriately. So now I feel as an organization, we've really come together to operate as a single unit where we have our programs, we have our administration, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We talk about staff and things like that. So now I'm going to share screen and begin with some of our slides. And so bear with me for a moment. And okay. And the agenda, which you should have seen. And then before we go to Natalie, I would like to do a few of our memorial tributes. First, of course, we have Lee Hanna. Lee Hanna joined the National Security Agency when she rose through the ranks for the duration of her career. She's an alumna of the National War College. She became the first woman senior operations officer in the National Security Operations Center before being promoted to the senior executive. She served as Deputy Director of Human Resources and led some of the agency's most mission-critical organizations. As part of her responsibilities, Lee briefed presidents, addressed Congress, led several intelligence production organizations, chaired an NSA oversight panel on processes and management of the agency's personnel office, and worked closely with U.S. intelligence partners as one of the few women in leadership roles in the agency. She was a supportive mentor to women at varying points in their careers. After retiring in 1997, Lee accepted a director's position on our foundation's board of directors in the spring of 2000. She also served on the development committee for the foundation and was a plank holder. She also served as the president of the Phoenix Society. Next, we would like to memorialize Charles Gandy. Well known for many of us, Charles made a significant contribution to the U.S. signals intelligence. His work in the field of remote collection systems was applied during the Vietnam War, where it helped to save the lives of thousands of Americans. Declassified from the 1980s, Charles' leadership on the Gunman Project is documented in The Spy in Moscow Station. He uncovered KGB electronic spyware that compromised embassy security for 8 years, Many will remember Charles and Eric Hazeltine, the author of The Spy in the Moscow Station, participation in our last GMM in October of 2019. His distinguished service to our country was acknowledged by induction into the 2008 National Security Agency Cryptologic Hall of Honor for his work in SIGINT, information assurance, and counterintelligence. Charles was awarded the medals, 5 medals for exceptional civilian service from NSA, CIA, and the United States Air Force. And finally, Barry Gordon Sims. Barry Gordon Sims served in the intelligence mission in both England and the United States. He began his career at GCHQ in Britain as a computer scientist. He moved to the US in the early 1980s to coordinate intelligence work with the American counterparts. He worked as a program director for Computer Science Corporation and Eagle Alliance, both in service to the National Security Agency, and he always took satisfaction in his contribution toward making the world safer for his 2 beloved countries. We will miss them all, and we appreciate their service to our country and to our foundation. All right, so now we're going to move on to the next part of our program, and we're going to do a little shift here, so bear with me for just a moment as we get set up, but I'm going to introduce Natalie Lange. And I just want to say a few words before we bring Natalie onto the stage, that we've established such a great partnership over the last year and a half, I'd say, since Natalie was brought in as our senior NSA person who works with the foundation. And we've just made such great progress in that, and it's going to culminate soon, we'll talk about it, in a memorandum of agreement that will be signed any day now, because it's finally finished. And so anyway, I'm just really happy to have Natalie with us today, and just hold for a second while we make the scene change. Okay. Huh? Oh. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. For those, are we unmuted?
Yeah, you should tell it.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Good morning again. This is Natalie Lange. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Director of Engagement and Policy at NSA. And so thank you, first of all, Laura and company, for having me in person today. I wanted to start with where Laura just left off with the memorandum of agreement, and then work backwards for some of the drivers that got us to this place. And so it has been a long time coming, but we do have a memorandum of agreement. We have all the verbiage agreed upon between the agency and the foundation. And you might start with saying, why do we need an MOA? Why do we need a memorandum of agreement? This is really to memorialize the partnership, certainly, but to more importantly, build a foundation for our next level partnership between the foundation and the agency. And so what we are looking at doing is creating a public persona that is a combination of the foundation and the agency. And I'll talk through some of the drivers in a minute for what brought us there. They won't be a surprise to you as a driver, but I think they are key to highlight why we are doing what we're doing and what the national urgency is to do some of these things. So I can't actually see the slides.
Oh.
So we'll start with some of the drivers. So we're working a single screen here. That's perfect. Thank you. I can see it. So the main driver for this next level partnership is the fact of that we have a digital or cyber component to pretty much everything we do across the nation. And so this brings us tremendous convenience, efficiency. We don't need to explain that to anybody. But with that convenience, there come a couple new aspects: vulnerability and a need to support cybersecurity and a need to build that industry for us to have this efficiency every day. And so when we look on the vulnerability side, from a cybersecurity perspective, what interconnects us worldwide has created great vulnerabilities for us, and the ability for us to come together, public and private, to hold off the adversary and the threat in that space has not kept pace with the adversary coming in to our vulnerable points. So one of the main calls for this partnership and the next level operation is to create that national urgency around a public-private partnership, so that we start to understand first what those vulnerabilities are, and then start to block or mitigate some of those vulnerabilities. And so we really believe that NCF, as an expert and a great network foundation, can pull together and be a convening function across the nation to help some of the goals that you've already seen through the foundation: educate and stimulate. So I'll start with the stimulate portion. This need to block vulnerabilities and to make our nation more safe needs to start with understanding. And so one of the reasons that we've put a formal point on this partnership is so that we can go forth from a Department of Defense and a government perspective, partnering with a foundation to create that national urgency across the public-private landscape, create the understanding first of what could happen in that space between public and private, and then create some opportunities to have dialogue and technical exchange. And so that convening function of the foundation, the network that you as members, the leadership bring to the table, the cryptologic and cybersecurity and foreign intelligence expertise that NSA brings to the table, we see a lot of power in that, and that's something that we could only build on. And so that memorandum of agreement is that platform to build on, to create those messaging platforms, to create a national urgency, and then to really start to pull together public and private. So I mentioned that there were two distinct angles to this great digital landscape and cyber landscape. Vulnerability from being interconnected worldwide is one, but a whole new skill field around cybersecurity is the second aspect. And so when you look at a lot of the stats that talk about there being 1 million cybersecurity jobs at least, and less than 100 or 200,000 people to fill those jobs, this is a very clear need for a new skill path and a new, I'd say, opportunity, but also challenge for us to fill those roles as quickly as possible. So the national urgency surrounds this need for building a new skill field as early as possible in a school career and thereafter. So the educational programs that you'll hear about later from Mark, this is just a good tip of the iceberg for the opportunities that we have across that education landscape, from kindergarten up through university and beyond, but also the general public, education of the general public of the threat, the opportunity of pulling students and people into this new cybersecurity field. I wouldn't say new, but this expanding cybersecurity field. And then what part we can play as a joint foundation and agency to really help drive that landscape. So when we talk about the vision, that is the bottom bullet you'll see there, that platform, and then the furthering of cross-sector cybersecurity operations. So this is not just private sector in general of folks that are a big bank or a globally dispersed organization, others that have regulatory functions much like NSA does, but it is also for universities to protect their intellectual capital. It is for utility companies to protect their infrastructure, which really is our infrastructure. And so we've sort of joked somewhat tongue-in-cheek at the agency that the national urgency isn't necessarily created until it hits the American people where it counts. So when you talk about the gasoline through the Colonial Pipeline hit, and you talk about the meatpacking industry that got hit, or the company that got hit, those type of things are wake-up calls. That is an awareness that these are our everyday life commodities that could be vulnerable. So some of that landscape has already been created, unfortunately, by those posing the threat, but we're also looking at as an opportunity for building this platform of education. Can I hit? Got it. Okay, so what are some practical applications in this space between the foundation and the agency. Education is a huge piece of this. It's amazing when you start looking into the amount of schools there are. Let's just start in Maryland, but across the nation, the opportunity there to start young, to start both boys and girls, and to start creating an understanding at the teacher level and at the student level of where the opportunities are and where we need to knit together more public-private partnerships. Education always has to be a big piece of that. So something that's bread and butter for the foundation is a natural starting point, and that's one of the things that we have built deeply into this memorandum of agreement. From an NSA perspective, a cryptology, cybersecurity expertise perspective, we expect to have a sort of rolling list of subject matter experts that can participate in these activities up to and through the director and deputy director as representatives of NSA. And so in the past, our cybersecurity directorate, which went by a different name in the past, if you remember that, but the now Cybersecurity Directorate will look at also convening from a cybersecurity perspective across the government, across the defense industrial base. They have already started some of this collaboration with new legislation for NSA that allows bi-directional sharing information between NSA and these companies. So there's some natural paths already for the foundation and the agency to further partner specific to cybersecurity and what those experts at NSA bring to the nation. So there's some practical application steps very well in place already. And then on the joint activities, in addition to the Cybersecurity Directorate, in addition to a myriad of educational activities, we do have an academic engagement coordinator set up for cross-cutting of activities all across NSA, who is already tightly linked in with Laura and the leadership team, and particularly Mark here, so that we can continue that momentum. In addition to that, we have an NSA advisory board that it is actually on a bit of a hiatus right now, subject to a Secretary of Defense order to get some of the organization of these back in order before he reinstitutes them. So we think it's just a pause as opposed to a disbanding. But one of the panels we have on this advisory board is specifically called an engagement panel. And it is specifically focused on recommending to NSA where we should engage in that public-private space. So we feel very confident with this body of experts that are all major CMOs or CFOs or CISOs at private industry companies coming in to partner with NSA, that is yet another stream of expertise that we can bring into the foundation and agency activities to drive this public-private knowledge and to stimulate those technical exchanges and understanding of the cyber landscape even more. And then finally, when we talk about initial list of topics and issues to convene on, this is something that I'd say Laura and I and others are very interested in hearing from you as members. Where do you think there is a good nexus or should be a better nexus between public and private? To discuss a utility company, to discuss Internet of Things, to discuss cybersecurity at major university groups, or anything in between. This is a starting point with the Memorandum of Agreement. We only see this growing, hopefully in stature and scope, membership, and also focus. So I'll pause there and open it up if there are any questions or comments on the high-level overview that I just provided. Turn the screen back to Laura here. Okay, so we're not seeing any questions coming in chat. So I will just close with saying this is a very exciting point for us to have reached a memorandum of agreement, to have reached a formal stepping off point to gather both public and private. We expect to see much more in the press, and not just to be in the press, but much more in the press of creating momentum around these kind of conversations. And so as you see this, hopefully in more public domain, the aim point is to really have this out there as a visible, cross-connected partnership that just grows upon itself. And so while we are based in Maryland, both the foundation and of course NSA, the process that we'd really like to put underway is to have a nationwide viewpoint on this. So thanks for a couple minutes today. Enjoy the rest of your meeting. And I look forward to hearing from you through Laura and others with your ideas for expanding on the public-private partnership side. It's a very exciting platform to start. So Laura, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Natalie. As you can see, we're still getting used to our scene changes here in our new studio, which I'll get to in a minute. I was hoping to have Vince join us, but I'm worried that he got lost, which gets into our new location and everything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and do my part of this, and hopefully he'll come before I'm finished. The other thing, let me just, so I'm going to move forward on this. All right. And keep going. All right. Okay, so we were going to, so going back to, we were supposed to have an in-person event, and we had it set up for the khaki conference room, which was large. They had limited us to 50 people. And in the end, I think we had a COVID got to us again, and we were unable to hold the event in the conference room, just because we didn't have enough people willing to come in person. And that's fine. I understand. And we were going to have another in-person event in May of next year anyway, for our, associated with the Center for Cryptologic History program, as well as our full day event as usual. So we decided it was best to just go ahead and have this as a virtual only for this time. So we wanted to honor our volunteers and a few of our staff members. I'm just going to mention them today, but I'm not going to do the full honoring until we have the next program in May. So first of all, our two that we are going to honor in May, one is Ed Jacobs, who served as our treasurer for 22 years and stepped down at the end of last year. And then Bill Soddy is, and thank you so much, Ed. And Bill Soddy also served for 22 years, did all of the QuickBooks and all of the tracked membership, tracked a lot of things for us for 22 years. And he is still helping, but he stepped back. He's not as nearly as involved. So we thought it was the appropriate time to honor him. But I'll tell you, he is on top of everything for us every day still. But the most important thing about Bill is the reason I wanted to do it now is because Bill is celebrating his 90th birthday next week. And anyway, we were so excited for Bill, and he was out on the golf course last week for the Crypto Cup and seemed to be having a great time out there and looked good. And anyway, so thank you so much, Bill, and have a happy 90th birthday. The other two are our staff members who have recently departed us. One is Mary Folletto, who served as an office manager for 18 years. Mary, most of you know Mary. Mary was, running the office and running a lot of many aspects of the foundation for a long time. All of our programming, all the communication with the museum folks and all of that. And Mary's decided to retire. And so we thank Mary for her service. And then finally, Carol Stromberg, who was our NCF executive assistant, working the CCEI program for us, and for 11 years served in that under multiple people. So we look forward to honoring them when we get together in May. All right, so moving on to new topics. Most of you may have noticed that we have a new name. We are now the National Cryptologic Foundation. And the reason is, why did we change from the National Cryptologic Museum Foundation? Well, there's a lot. First, the museum, I don't know how many times I would have to go places and first explain that we are not the museum, because many, many people, when we would come in as the National Cryptologic Museum Foundation, assumed we were the museum. So we'd have to say, no, we are not the museum, and always had to explain that away. But more importantly, the new name reflects our broader mission. We are still supporting the museum today, and still providing, artifacts and financial support and all of that. But we're doing a lot more than just supporting the museum. And this allows us to do everything that we would like to do under educate, stimulate, commemorate, and as we, continue to grow our education program, and as we start these convenings that we had with NSA, as we grow that partnership, it's going to be a lot more than just working with the folks at the museum. We're going to be working with the cybersecurity directorate and their education programs, as Natalie had mentioned. So we're really excited about this. We're one last step away from official. We are official by the state of Maryland. We just need to get the IRS recognition of that, and that happens when we file our 990 in later this year. So that should be complete as well. Okay. A little bit about our board of directors. We did bring on a couple of new directors the past year. First of all, Javier Mieres, who was the president of UMGC, stepped down last year, and the new president of UMGC, Gregory Fowler, has joined our board. Secondly, we've brought on Sue Gordon, who's a former PDDNI. Many of you probably recognize her. She's out and about quite a bit and was in the news quite a bit for some time. And Sue has joined our board as well. We're really excited to have them. Of course, Chris Inglis did resign from the board, as was required by when he took his new position as the National Cyber Director. So he had to step down and recuse himself from his work with us or representing us in any way, I should say, for a year. So anyway, maybe someday we'll have Chris back with us. But for the time being, that won't be the case. Anyway, and we continue in working with our Nominating and Governance Committee to look at potential new other board members that we'll be bringing on in the near future. And we're happy that Chris Roberti is the chair of that committee for us. He's doing a great job. Okay, some staff additions that I want to talk about. First, I couldn't remember if Rebecca was actually with us for the last GMM or not, but she joined us just about a year ago. So as the director of development, and Rebecca came to us. She was previously, I knew about her through the Spy Museum, and some of our John Garcia, one of our active members and volunteers, told me about her a long time ago and said, hey, this is somebody you might want to consider bringing on to help. So she's well connected in the community, knows a lot of the people that we need to have as supporting us through financial means, and has done a really great job. The second person we brought on board is Jackie Sherry. Jackie is somebody that, and she's come on as our I call it controller and general administrator. You might want to call her also the director of business. At some point we had that as in our staff, but Jackie's come in and has taken over the finances of the organization. And it's a blessing for me. So it's taken a lot of the work off of my plate as well. And also with Bill Sadi's stepping back some. So Jackie's basically taken over all the work that Bill was doing. But Jackie is on top of all of this, has had to learn a lot of new skills. She came from NSA, but I knew her from NSA and I knew she could do this. And I knew that she had the financial background and the staff, leading a staff type of operational staff that we needed in place. So happy to have her. And then finally, Jennifer Langen has joined us as part of our education team. And we got to know Jennifer through the Anne Arundel County. We had a grant from Anne Arundel County to build to do some updates to our escape room and build a gaming kiosk. And we met Jennifer through that. And she's a former teacher who is now pursuing cyber training and a degree in cyber. I can't come up with a precise degree, but anyway, she's leading now our cyber chats and is our NEPRIS coordinator. So we're happy to have Jennifer on board. Okay, so the other thing that happened is we moved. And so many of you probably know we have always had two offices, one, the small office in the museum, and then the other was an office in Millersville over on Veterans Highway. And that's primarily where the CCEI work was, that the staff there. And that's where I lived most of the time. But what happened was two things. First, we had to leave the museum office for the foreseeable future as the museum is closed for the asbestos mitigation, which I'm sure Vince will get into when he arrives. We know he's on his way now. And so the return to that office is to be determined. We aren't exactly sure when that's going to happen. But in the other thing that happened was our lease was up in Millersville, and we decided to look at other places, mostly because they weren't willing to work with us, and it was going to drive the rent up too high. So we worked with one of our board members, Rand Griffin, who helped us to find this location in Glen Burnie, right on Landmark Drive. It is literally right off of I-97 on Quarterfield Road. I'm really happy here. I have a few photos of the location from the outside, easily accessible. It's funny, there's a lot of doctors' offices and things like that around here. So we do occasionally get random people who come through, and sometimes visiting the doctor say, hey, I saw your sign. I wanted to come in and see you. So, one of our members poked her head in one day. It was kind of fun. So we're really happy with this place. It has a large room that we can use for, we can use it as a conference area, and that's the picture on the right. You can use it as a conference area, or we can use it for a classroom because we can reconfigure it to be a classroom. The other part of the move is, if you notice, we're in this moving back and forth. We actually have a studio now. We've spent so much time online in the last year and a half or 2 years that doing podcasts, doing webinars, doing you name it, that we needed to have something a little bit more professional to use. So thank you to Christine and Bill Harding. They set us up with this really nice studio, and we have professional cameras, professional lighting, and professional mics. And it's so nice to have this. So someday, if you're ever over here, you can poke your head in and see our nice studio. Okay, so going on to the relationship with that Natalie talked about, our relationship with NSA and the memorandum of agreement. This is something that is going to happen. It could be this week if well, it won't be this week because we're getting General Marconi to sign it. So it'll take a little bit of time to do that, but it's finished. Let's just say that it is finished. And it was a lot of work to put this in place. And it consists of a main body of a document with multiple annexes. But we included in there, it's all based on the vision that we had developed with NSA back earlier this year. George Barnes had a big play in that, developing that vision. And we still talk about educate, right? And to advance the cybersecurity education, innovation, and awareness, the stimulate piece. And that's where we do a lot of the convenings that we would like to do, public convenings where we can bring experts together and then commemorate. Of course, we're going to continue to do the commemoration. And it lays the framework for potentially having a memorial fund established, or that would be one way it could look. How would we, for people who have been injured in the line of duty or have died in the line of duty at NSA, creating a fund for them for immediate assistance or for scholarships for the children and things like that. So this lays the groundwork for that. That part will come later. There's some work to be done before we can make that happen. But we're really excited about it. And it's been many months in the works and a lot of hands in there. Many attorneys have looked at it, and I think we're in a really good place. And by the way, I didn't say at the beginning, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, or I will have Q&A at the end if anybody has any questions. So now for where we are with the actual CCEI. So this has been a lot of work in the last year, and it's been an interesting experience, I'll say that. So first of all of our regulatory approvals remain in place. The project remains shovel ready. Last year, we entered into a contract with Gilbane Construction Company to serve as the construction manager for the project. But we now find ourselves at a strategic pause. And that is because the Department of Defense has invoked some things that have to be done as milestones to allow commencement of construction. And predominantly what that means is that they are treating this as a MILCON project. And although there's no MILCON funding, but that's because it's on government property, or I should say DoD property, they want to treat it as a MILCON project. So therefore, there are different rules and regulations that have been put in place that some are known and some are not completely known. So we're at a pause while that is sorted out. We are working with some of our congressional members to help lift us out of this dilemma as well. But in the meantime, we're pausing our work on that. But included in the project was the procurement of steel and precast concrete, which we had already started before putting the shovel in the ground. So we have already finished milling and fabrication of 640 tons of steel, and that was completed in January. And now the steel is currently stored in the lot behind the museum. And then we also have precast concrete, the interior panels. Those are still being stored at the manufacturer in Virginia. So I have a few photos for you so you can see that there was actually work going on. This is our steel being lifted off of cranes and onto the lots behind the museum. And one more. Yeah. And over here in the corner, you'll see over in the corner on the side, you'll see Larry Castro out there. He's putting up some tape there in the so that some caution tape to keep people away from that for as we were still putting things in place. So that's where we are with that. I don't know when that relief will come, if it will come, or in what form it will come. But in the meantime, we're in a pause. Okay. A couple more things that we have. We've talked about our founders. We've done a really good job in fundraising this year, despite all of the other, despite the pandemic and despite the fact that we're in this pause with the DoD. We've had some significant work in that. And I'm showing here like new. When I say new, that means some people may have been founders in another way before, but they've raised a level. So here you see a list of it. The Verstandig Family Foundation is coming in as a major donor for this, for the effort. And that was all based on the on getting this MOA signed. So that's really important to us as well. So they'll be coming in to support our programs and the CCEI. And then we also have some new 4-star founders. Fed Data gave $1 million contribution late last year. And then the Looker Family Trust gave us another $500,000. And then some of the others like Mantech, Raytheon, raised their contributions, so they got to a new level. And then a couple new ones is 6th Gen was a new company, and that has joined us. And then Lockheed Martin just gave us another contribution, and we just put in the paperwork for that yesterday. So we're hopeful that will come in. And then we have some 1-star founders. Al Gray from our foundation. Thank you, Al, for becoming a 1-star founder. And then a couple of companies, Black Cape, Carasoft, Peraton, and then a couple more individuals, Rand and Holly Griffin and Stuart Wagner and family. And then we were also fortunate to have FedEx give us a $50,000 donation in honor of Chris Inglis, which is, I guess, standard procedure when somebody leaves the board. They are honored with a contribution to a charity of their choice. The last thing before I move on to Mark, I do say there have been a number of our members as well who've given $5,000 or more, and we are so appreciative of that, of their contributions. And that is, obviously we're appreciative of all contributions of all the members who contribute as well. But there have been a couple who've given us some fairly large donations, and we're always, wow, look at that. That's really exciting. So anyway, so thank you to all of you who supported our efforts, who have donated to the cause, who and continue to support our programs and our CCEI work. Now I'm going to move on to Mark, who is with us virtually. And he's going to give a presentation about education. And by the way, congratulations to Mark, because yesterday, I think it was yesterday the baby was born. I can't remember. He's a proud grandfather of a baby boy, Tobias. And anyway, so he's out in California and doing double time here as grandpa and as our education director.
Thank you, Laura. And I'll ask you, I guess you're driving the slides for me. Before we go to the next slide, I just really wanted to make a comment.
Mark, you're
here.
muted. I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you, Mark.
Oh, okay. You can hear us? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. It looks like everybody else can hear
anybody
me.
hear Mark?
Yes.
Uh-oh.
I can
Yes.
hear both of you.
Yes.
I can hear both of you as well.
Yes.
Oh, I can hear you now. Sorry, Mark. Go ahead.
Okay, so you can hear me now? Okay. Okay, good. So before we go to the next slide, I just want to take a second here to address our membership. I think it's it's critically important, and with great appreciation. We could not perform this education program without your support, without your participation. Many of you have volunteered to do our cyber chats, and I'll be talking about that in a second. And also, most importantly, our donors. The education program relies 100% on our donor population, and it really has humbled me in the amount of funds that you folks have channeled our way to help educate. You heard it from Natalie, to help educate our K-12 environment. Our main focus, even though we do K-12 in our language, it really is sixth grade to high school is the main body of people we're impacting right now. So thank you very much. And secondly, I've got to thank Christine and Jen, part of the education staff. Obviously, those are the three of us are the education staff. And I mean, obviously, Laura helps, Jackie helps, we all help. I really liked her last slide. It said it's a team effort. But I just wanted to say publicly here, there's no way that that this education program would be possible without people like Christine and without Jen. And so I'm very grateful and humbled to have them. Next slide. Okay, so there's a lot going on, and I'm not going to spend 6 hours. I could on these slides, but these are just some of the things we're doing, and I really mean some of the things we're doing. It's the most important. Well, it's the ones we have a lot of energy in. We have a lot on our wish list that with future funding. And I'm not going to be talking specifically about the wish list today. I'm just want to give you an update on the activities that we're doing. Next slide, please. Our hallmark area is our cybersecurity curriculum guidelines. The website is on this site. I really encourage, if you haven't had the opportunity to visit the Cryptologic website. And Cindy Sadi, I tell you what, there isn't a better person running a website than Cindy. She has done such a great job for us in the education program. And so my thanks go out to Cindy for all the great work she does to highlight the great activities that are going on. So Cindy, thank you very much for your work on the websites. But in that website, you'll see the cybersecurity curriculum guidelines. What we discovered through talking to many educators over the past 4 years is that there wasn't really a set of topics that curriculum could be developed around. There was a lot of curriculum being developed, but it was just kind of all over the place. And so working with Dr. Melissa Dark and Teach Cyber, and through great funding by Northrop Grumman and those folks, we were able to create these set of big ideas. These guidelines are now being used nationally. These guidelines were used by University of Alabama to develop a full year cyber course for deaf and hearing for the hearing and sight impaired students. It was used by University of Alabama under an NSA grant to develop a full year curriculum for rural area and remote learning students. It is being used by the state of Hawaii as their standard for cyber education. So we're such great success. And I'll talk about, I think the next slide will talk about our how it's been used, I think, in our next slide. Yes. Teach. Okay, back up one. Okay. Okay, so this isn't the new deck. Okay, so we were working with with Teach Cyber, as I said, Dr. Melissa Dark, and she was able then to create a full 1 year in classroom program for high school, and this is high school oriented. Their website is on the slide. I really encourage you to go there. All of this education is 100% free. Why? Because we have great donors from which it can be developed. That is one of our themes at the National Cryptologic Foundation, is everything is developed in what is called Creative Commons license, which means any teacher can download this educational materials free of charge, as long as they attribute to Teach Cyber and National Cryptologic Foundation. And if they make improvements, they feed that back for us so that we can keep the curriculum fresh. In addition, Teach Cyber has just released a bunch of updates to some of the classes in this, and that will be a standard of keeping this curriculum fresh. Because as we all know, cybersecurity is changing rapidly. And if we don't take the opportunities to update our curriculum, it becomes stale. Next slide. So there's 8 units in this course, and it's a what is cybersecurity, and you can see the list here where it follows those 8 big ideas that we talked about. Inside this curriculum is the full lessons, slides, activities, resources, answer keys, laboratory exercises. And by the way, there are hand-on laboratory off of a cyber range. We have partnered with Virginia Tech with their national cyber range. We've been working with Virginia Tech for many, many years. David has done a great job. It's all with AWS, so it's all online, and quite a nice cyber range that these students can do their lab work with. Next slide. This shows that there's, and this slide is a little bit old and outdated. There's well over, I think, over 600 users now in 47 different states using the curriculum and using the standards. So it is out there now. You can see Texas has, we have a lot of folks in Texas and in Virginia, and people piloting to include, you see Hawaii is lit up there as well. Our good friends on the island of Kauai are routine participants in our cyber chats and in what we're trying to do with our educational programs. Next slide. Because of all this work, we were able to seek an award from the National Security Agency through California State University, San Bernardino, to do a study on, is there enough work in the high school level to create a program of excellence? Next slide. We're teamed with Dark Enterprise, Moraine Valley, and University of Alabama on this. There's lots of stuff going on in the environment. As you can see in this slide, things have been going on for a long time. So it was, is it time now to actually designate schools for their excellence in work in cybersecurity? So this is a great study effort. It's a 2-year effort, valued at over about $490,000 that we received in a grant through NSA. Next slide. One of the reasons was, you know, and this is kind of a way we're conducting the study, is it feasible? And then is it advisable? You know, we could come up with, you know, we have the Centers of Academic Excellence, which is a program started by NSA back in the late 1990s. I think the first school was designated in the year 2000. Department of Homeland Security joined NSA in this, I think about halfway through the program, I think in the mid 2000s, to join NSA in the Centers of Academic Excellence. That's at the college level. The thought was, okay, can we do the same thing in the high school? Well, there's a lot more high schools than there are colleges, and the states run the high schools. Colleges are not run by the states. Colleges, a lot of colleges are, but it's a different structure, different governance for colleges than there are governance for the high schools. We learned from one of our great volunteers, Chris Putnam up in New Hampshire that she's been helping us, and I'll talk about the booklet in a minute. But Chris commented to us that even in New Hampshire, it's down at the local level, not even at the county level. So it's a lot different in the high school. So is it even feasible to come up with a recognition program at the high school level? And then even if it is feasible, is it advisable? Can it be sustained? Is there money? Is there a person who's going to run it? So these are the things we're focusing on in this report that'll be due next year. It ends in 2022. Next slide, please. We also work with Towson University on an element called CLARK, Cybersecurity Labs and Resource Knowledge Base. This was started, I think about 4 years ago, and we jointly host this on our website. Again, please go to the site because these change every day, and these numbers are a lot lower than they are today, etc. on this slide. But it's meant to host college level cybersecurity curriculum. And in the top line is the process, to where it's an open environment. Any professor who is developing cybersecurity curricula can enter the curricula into the website. It's an easy in, but there's a check mark there, and that's a very important check mark. It's where the quality of that curriculum is then determined for pedagogy. Is it at the right level? And from a cybersecurity standpoint, is it valid cyber concepts? And if it passes both of those criteria, it is then brought into the database for people to download. Again, totally free, Creative Commons, no cost to any college who would like to download that. It is crowdsourced from a standpoint that new and improved things are then uploaded and they go through the process. As you can see by the numbers, lots of people are using CLARK today. Next slide. That also garnered another avenue in the California State University San Bernardino effort for another $490 some odd thousand. We're working with our strategic partner Secure Ed to develop what is called CARD, the CAE Community Resource Directory. One of the challenges we discovered is of the 360 or so centers of academic excellence, they grow every year, are doing great work. Many of those universities are research universities. I think there's about 80 of them designated as research universities. That work is important work, and sometimes it just is stored out in a college database, in the university database, and it's not publicly available, and it's not reusable by other people. So you get some universities who say, oh, I got this great idea, but in fact somebody else has done it, and they could leverage that work and take it the next step. So this resource directory is meant to pull from all the centers of academic excellence and provide a single source directory where the data is not retained in CARD. It's a directory to where people can go. It's searchable. You can then go to that university to see the source documents and learn from it, use it, reuse it, etc. So a very valuable resource for the centers of academic excellence. We're very proud of this database. Next slide. I think I may have a slide. Yes. It is up and operational right now. It is in, I think we're in beta mode right now. So it is still building. It is due out in formal fashion next year. Both of these grants end in 2022. So again, the web address is listed there. Next slide. Our teaming with NEPRIS is another one of our main stays. The advantage of doing what we call our cyber chats is that we're in between the teacher and industry professionals. As I mentioned earlier, many of you have signed up to be our teachers, and we're very pleased to have Jen Langdon on our team now, who has just blossomed our cyber chat environment. Next slide. I think I got another. Yes. Our cyber chats allow us to do these routine career talks and webinars. We are involved in the Career Awareness Week that's here in October. In fact, I think it starts next week with talks. I think we have 5 talks planned for the Career Awareness Week on top of our cyber chats. Our cyber chats are guided by our 8 big ideas. So we take those 8 big ideas and seek folks who are part of that environment. And I do ask for you to go to our website, because there is a area in the cyber chat aspect of our website to where if you want to participate as a speaker, and all you need is this capability that we're on right now. You need about a half hour, 45 minutes of your time, and you can share your great experience in cyber, what you did around the topics. Christine and Jen and myself can help you with your subject area, again, around those 8 big ideas. So we talk about 70% of the time about the topic and about 30% of the time about your career. And these are going to 6th graders up to high school to help entice. Like Natalie said, we've got to help people at the K to 12 level, inspire them, because they'll never go on. And there's many jobs that don't need a college career. And so we need to help these kids get excited and pique their interest, and your experience is very important in that. And so please go to our website. There's a thing you can just sign up, and it comes to us and we'll contact you. Next slide. We've gotten a lot of feedback from our folks. The one around, I think it looks like an envelope, basically said that I hadn't thought about cyber before, and I think it was Laura's talk, that after Laura's talk, this student said, hey, I think I'll consider cyber. So that's the impact we get from folks in this. And so we've gotten some great feedback on these talks. So really appreciate all your help, and we can always use more people to give talks. Next slide. We had a great opportunity to develop a middle school booklet, and this is geared towards that 6 to 12 age. The booklet kind of walks them through a day of using their phone, and they download something bad, and then it walks them through what happens to their friends because they downloaded something bad, and then it walks them out and shows them all the different aspects. And there are 4 of the big ideas in this booklet. Please go to our website. It's downloadable again for free. We've had great success with the booklet. In fact, Cobb County in Georgia, after they saw the booklet, sent us a note and said, hey, can we have 25,000 of these booklets to give to every student in our middle school system? And so we've already sent 1,000 down to them. We had, thank you to the Looker Foundation, we were able to print 20,000 of these booklets to have them on hand. But it is free as a PDF download to any teacher who wants it. And we're in a process right now where we're going to be sending a communication. And again, thanks to our volunteers like Chris up in New Hampshire, along with Christine. And we have accumulated a database of all of the middle school principals in the United States, And we're in the process of sending them a communication about this booklet so they can acquire it for their middle school students. We had, and Christine, I know you're online, I forget now the person here in Maryland who just got very excited about the booklet, and I'm going to be spending a day with their school explaining the concepts of the booklet, and we're getting them every student a copy of the booklet as well. So this has been very successful, again, with our strategic partner, Start Engineering. Really appreciate their help in building this booklet. Next slide. We were able to, because of that, gain another contract from GULA, or grant from GULA. We competed for this one and we placed third in the competition, gaining us 150,000. So to the GULAs, we really appreciate it. They were the sponsor for the first middle school booklet, and we're going to be able to leverage that effort to build for seniors in taking data care message to our senior population. And we're working with our partners in another one of the GULA awards was with and I don't see their name on another slide. I think I had their name, but it's a firm that deals with the senior citizens here in Maryland. And so we're working very closely. We hope to have that out in the December timeframe, this effort for our seniors. Thank you. Next slide. We also have an escape room. This escape room was tested at the 24th World Jamboree, where we went through about 1,000 scouts, and they loved the escape room. And we were able to get a grant from Maryland, from the casino folks, and we were able to upgrade the room using some additional National Cryptologic Museum artifacts. We were able to find a Enigma simulator. It's a little box. It looks like the Enigma machine, but it's a simulator. And so that is the last puzzle piece now in the escape room, that they have to actually use an Enigma machine to decode a message to stop it's a nuclear reactor accident, etc. And it's a lot of fun. Laura's been through it, and we will have it at our Founders Day to where everybody can go through it. It takes about a half hour is what you get. And we've built a flyaway kit with that grant to where we can box it all up securely and be able to ship it and or take it to any school. So we're really excited about the escape room opportunity. Next chart. We also, as you can see, we have a lot going on, and Laura, please give me a 5-minute thing, because I don't want to run late here. I could go on forever. But in the gaming kiosk, we were able to, with that same casino grant, we were able to go to Anne Arundel Community College, and we got some really good interns, and they built us a 3-dimensional cybersecurity game. Aimed at, again, middle schoolers to pique their interest. It's been, I think it's in final testing now. We're actually having middle schoolers run through it and help improve how it operates and manipulates. But it's a great game, and so we're anxious to get the game out on our website. Cindy's been instrumental in working with our team to do the right techniques and technical stuff to be able to post it on our website so the game can be played. So we're real excited about that opportunity, and it should be out pretty soon. We also work, next slide. We also work with the local high schools. I sit on the Homeland Security Signature Program at Meade and at Crofton. Both of these integrated community stakeholder teams, or ICSTs, meet monthly, and I am an advisor on the cybersecurity and crypto aspects of these programs. In Meade, it's a Homeland Security aspect, but Crofton is really focused on the digital age. As you can see, it's a brand new high school. I'm very excited about being part of that program. We've already provided several pieces of curriculum for them to use to teach their students. Also, we're very excited to be part of the Alabama School of Cyber Technology and Engineering down in Huntsville. We are working with them to provide, to design an American history of cryptology. We have provided them books from the museum, and again, the museum staff has been wonderful in helping us provide that information from our museum down to Alabama. Next slide, please. Just want to briefly talk about this. Theorem Media, if you, I think I have another slide in here, next slide, is creating a Cyber Nation program. Next slide, please.
Okay, but
Okay, they're creating 20 short documentary films. If you remember Schoolhouse Rock, you know, I Am Just a Bill. These are the folks who brought you that type of entertainment and knowledge. Their next project now, they just did one on the economy. I really entice you to go see that one. It's great. Now they're turning their attention here, and they were also a GULA Award winner, and we meet monthly. All the GULA Award winners meet monthly, and they're about ready to release their short based on the GULA money for cyber and starting down this road of the Cyber Nation. So we're very happy to collaborate with them. Tony Sager, which most of you know, is on their advisory board as well. So it's an exciting opportunity to work with these folks. Next slide. We've done a lot of work with the Cyberspace Solarium Commission. If you haven't seen their report, please Google it. One of their pillars is on trying to improve cyber education. And we have played a pivotal role in leading several work groups and participating in nationwide webinars on this topic to continue the work of the commission in trying to improve cyber education nationwide. So it's really good to have our National Cryptologic Foundation as a leader in this particular area. Next slide. Again, here I just want to close with thanking everyone. We could not do this education program without our benefactors who have designated their money, a part of their money towards the education program. And I thank you very much. And again, this was a tip of the iceberg. I see there's a lot in the chat room. And we really appreciate those comments. We really, and yes, I think the slides will be made available. And I have some other slides that I can provide as well. So with that, I turn it back over to Laura.
you had another slide in here, Mark. Was that?
Okay.
There's actually two more. We added one.
Oh, okay. Well, why don't you go ahead?
I don't know if this was supposed to be in there. This was left over from something else. So I'm going to go to
Okay.
the next one. This was just to remind everybody of upcoming chats we have for the week next week, which includes Raquel Cosden and Rob Joyce scheduled for next week, so that people know where they can sign up to attend. Okay.
Cool.
And then, or you can go to our, I'm sorry, Christina's giving me updates. Or you can go directly to our website and you can see the full schedule of chats for next week. And I do have, Mark, before we move on to Vince, there was a question that came in. You can answer it and I could probably answer part of it too. But the question was, can the education and other missions include conveying IAD's history over the past 50 years? For example, the STNS program can include collaborating with similar initiatives in other countries, UK, France. Both the UK's NCSC and France's ARCSI have a very similar education initiative, can include real-time awareness of industry cybersecurity activities in major bodies and nonprofit entities, such as the Center for Internet Security.
Would love that. And in fact, we have talked with the opportunity to work with Bletchley Park. And then another one that came up was, and Christine, I think it's, oh shoot, I forget the museum up in the Northeast, where they were the SIGINT collector, basically, of the submarine signals coming off the Nazi submarines. It was then sent down to the Enigma breakers down in DC, et cetera. And we were talking with them of showing the whole circle of the Enigma environment. So there are lots of opportunities, I think, to expand what we're doing, to show the collaboration with our NATO allies in information assurance. So
Mark,
100%.
that's the Chatham Marconi Museum.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Christine. The Chatham Marconi Museum. And so we're looking at, these are some of the things I talked about before of we have lots of great ideas on our wish list. And those wish lists can be improved or executed once we get additional funds. And doing stuff like this would be wonderful. I think that would totally expand, especially IAD's history, because most of you know that's where I spent 20 years of my career at NSA, 3 as an Air Force officer, and then another 18 as an executive. So IAD is definitely at my heart, and would love to be able to show that in our NATO connection. So so great idea. Thank you. It's captured, and we will add that to the wish list.
And the other question was about AFIO. AFIO is a strong education involvement, and are you coordinating with them? I mean, from our perspective, I know we've done some coordination on sharing of, let's say, information and events. So we're working that so that their events are cross-pollinated with ours, so that we're doing that. But I don't know, have you done any work on the education piece with them is the question.
I don't think so yet, but that's a good idea and a good recommendation, and we will put that under consideration. Thank you so much.
So if anybody has any other questions, put them in the chat. After Vince is finished, we'll take some more questions if there, I mean, there is time, we definitely have time. So at this point, I am going to, it has me up, but I'm going to turn it over to Vince, and I'm going to stop share because he doesn't have slides. So I'm going to put Vince on mic, and he's going to do a presentation. Vince Houghton, he's going to do a presentation on the museum. We're live and on camera.
All right, so don't say all the words I normally say. Good morning. Yeah, I'd have slides for you, but there's nothing new to show, unfortunately. We're still, as you know, in our limbo stage. I'm a little taller than.
Yeah.
I'm not. No, it doesn't move. All right. Well,
it doesn't move. I can adjust the
it's
screen.
all good. We're continuing to be in a limbo stage a lot longer than we hope to be, but we think we now have, we're a lot closer to some kind of formal numbers than we were before, certainly date-wise. The contracts for rehabbing the building have been fully signed and done. We're days away, as we're being told by INL, we're days away from actually starting to break stuff in all the right ways. As you know, we're doing a full rehab top to bottom. Okay, yeah, so I'll give you some of the background behind this. So there's a lot of background that we didn't know existed beforehand. We've been pushing while we are in this limbo period, and I could put a limbo period between keeping the current museum and moving into something else at some point down the road. We wanted to do an update, at least a facelift of the current museum. And so we started working on finding ways to revitalize the museum, to try to find areas in which we hadn't covered before that we thought that we should cover, ways that we can do it in a manner that is more visitor friendly, perhaps than was before, in a way that we can find new artifacts to put on display to reinvigorate the museum from a you know, the topic area is fantastic. It's just finding ways to make it new and make it unique, so that we can claim, like we should be claiming, that we are a must go to museum whenever anyone visits the DC area. So we started working on that, and part of that was looking at. I just wanted a new carpet, man. I looked at the floor. We started moving stuff around, and the carpet was 15 different colors. And so I go to NSA. I go, can I get a new floor? And they said, sure, we'll kind of take a look at this. And then they started pulling up the carpet squares and found asbestos in the flooring. And they go, you're definitely getting a new floor now. I'm like, all right. They actually came to us kind of, INL came to us kind of sheepishly, like, we're sorry we found asbestos. I'm like, thank God you found asbestos, because now we get a new floor. There was also a problem of the roof leaking, and anyone's been around the building long enough. There are roof leaks on top of roof leaks in the building, and every time they went to fix one, they'd make 5 others as they walked across the roof. And so finally, we were able to get NSA to pony up the money to give us a whole new roof. And while they were surveying the roof to decide whether or not how to fix it, they found just a ridiculous amount of mold in the space in between the ceiling and the roof. So now that's going to be completely remediated. And so there's a lot of work that has to be done. While they're doing this, I asked them to move a couple walls for me on the inside and to create a couple of interesting new spaces that we're going to have when we reopen. So for anyone who knows the old museum, they're going to walk into this and not understand where they are. Because it's going to be quite different. Not just the ceiling, of course, but not just the floor, but even the internal structure of the museum is going to be changed somewhat. And so that is in process. We are days away, as I'm being told by INL, from actually people starting to work on the building. What this means is, unfortunately, we probably will not, we've been kicked out of the building, actually. The staff of the museum is working at the National Business Park right now. We're working with P1. We're just kind of in the middle of all the P1 people. We are the redheaded stepchildren. They gave us a corner in the office, and they hope that we just don't make too much noise. So we're kind of sitting there doing what we can, waiting for us to get the building back. And what that looks like that's going to be is March. So March of next year, we might get the building back. It might be completely done at that point. That doesn't mean the museum will reopen at that point. We're going to need about 2 months to put the museum back together once we get the building back. There are no exhibits out. There are no artifacts out. There are no cases out. There are no labels. There's nothing. So when we get the building back in March, we'll have a rush. And actually 2 months is not a lot of time. So we'll have a rush to get the museum in order to allow us to open to the public, hopefully at some point in May. Now, there may be other speed bumps along the way. That timing may not be 100%. Anyone who knows not only construction, but government construction can understand that we may not necessarily meet that deadline. There's also since the fiscal year has passed, we've actually now dumped another request for a bunch of new stuff for the museum, including updating the bathrooms, updating lighting. Because museum lighting is pretty particular, and the lighting inside the building is not. With the recessed lighting and some of the track lighting is not what you want for a museum. So we put in a request to actually have a lighting specialist come in and give us more proper professional museum lighting. That probably won't happen anytime soon, but the bathrooms might. It looks like we're trying to push for the funding to get the bathrooms done as soon as possible. That might actually overlap with the construction that they're doing now. It might get to the point where it kind of overlaps, and they said we won't have them done till June. So I'll have a conversation about whether or not we open in June. So we have brand new bathrooms when we open, and we're not having visitors going to temporary bathrooms outside in some kind of a trailer. So we are kind of up in the air on exactly when we're going to be reopening. However, when we do, it will be a almost completely new museum experience. There will be certainly the artifacts you expect to see. We didn't reimagine things saying we don't need purple anymore, or why tell the story of Midway? No, of course not. Everything you expect to see is going to be there. But we've included a lot of interesting new things that were not there beforehand. We finally wrenched away nuclear command and control from the classification folk. They're allowing us to actually tell that story to a lot more broadly than I expected them to, including getting an artifact called the DEC Alpha, which was the machine that created every nuclear code for the United States from the 1980s through about a couple of years ago. So we're going to actually put that machine on display, which I can never imagine they would have let us do, and they're going to let us, which is pretty extraordinary. We're also having an entire space dedicated to linguistics. So for the language folk out there and the people that felt as though they'd been ignored, there's going to be a lot of really interesting interactivity, not only for kids, but for adults when it comes to languages and how to learn languages and how nuance is almost a code in itself. We're kind of breaking down slang and regional dialects and other things is almost cryptology in a sense. So that's going to be some of the new stuff that we're doing. Now, what are we doing now while we're sitting around? Well, one of the big things that we are now 99.9% done doing is literally going through one by one, by hand, every single artifact the museum owns, which is over 5,000 artifacts, most of them at the Dorsey Road warehouse. We've been down there every day now for months, opening up old crates that in some cases had been sealed back in the 50s and 60s and seeing what the hell's inside of them, because there was not a good inventory. We had really no idea what we had. In many cases, there were crates full of things that weren't inventoried at all. We've actually discovered at least a dozen artifacts that no one knew existed. In fact, some artifacts that Crypto Museum, our friends in Europe who kind of have the eye on what is going on in the world of cryptology, certainly machines, they had actually reported that there were no existing examples of particular machines that we know there are now, because we've actually found some of them on Dorsey Road that no one knew were there. So it's a really interesting discovery, not only for us, but also for academics who are now reaching out saying, oh my God, I can't believe you have X. Can I look at that? It's almost legendary. And now we actually get to see the real thing. So we're finding some really interesting, cool stuff that we just didn't know was there. And now we have a full rendering, a full understanding of every artifact the museum has, where our holes are, because we don't want to have holes. We want to fill in things that give us a full picture of how to tell these stories. And in my case, most importantly, what I can do to get the name of the museum out there. So the intent is for some of the conferences in early 2022, particularly the American Alliance of Museums. I don't need a background, it's fine.
Okay.
The American Alliance of Museums, the International Studies Association, and some of these other conferences where the academics are, where the museum people are, we're essentially going to create a menu of artifacts that we will, and we're going to, by menu, I'm literal, we're going to create a laminated brochure of things that we can loan out of, hey, what do you want for your museum? We have Enigmas, we have these machines, I have a box of 700 M209s. We have all these things that we're not going to put on display anytime soon. We'd love to loan them out to you, to museums all over the country, all over the world, as long as you put on loan from the National Cryptologic Museum. That gets our name out there. That allows us to not only increase the awareness of the museum, but also spread some love around to when we want something in return. This is something that has been done in the past, but we're going to kick it in high gear moving forward. Now that we know what we have, now that we know what we can do as far as lending out artifacts and not missing out on what we're actually showing in the museum. We've also now systematically got money from NSA to do a book conservatorship. So the rare book that we have, a lot of from the Con collection, a lot of just from the museum collecting with your help and with others' help. Some of these books are not doing great. And so we've actually brought in a professional book conservator to make sure we can increase the lifespan of these books, in some cases indefinitely. They're going to do hundreds of books for us. They're starting with the most in need, the most fragile books. Of course, those tend to be the oldest ones. And they're going to try to make it to where those are not going to fall apart on us, and we can actually show those. One of the things that we are going to make sure that we do that wasn't done in the past was to rotate the books that are on display. Really, books from that, anything older than about 50, 60 years should only be on display. You're talking about paper for about 3 months or 6 months tops, particularly considering the lighting that we don't have in the museum. The rare book case in the old museum had been there for years and years and years. That's a real problem. So we're going to fix that. We're going to make sure that we're rotating these books so that we can have them for generations to come. And that's a big part of what we're doing now while we're closed. Poor Rob Simpson is constantly going and pulling books out of the museum to bring them to the conservator because we just don't have access. We only have access to the back of the museum where he's able to stack all the books. And then finally, we're doing all this stuff that you would expect of a museum redesign. We're working with the graphic shop at NSA to create new labels, new graphics. We're working with the web design people to create interactives inside the museum. And we're working with the TV studio AV people to create new AV experiences, including things that just weren't there before. We're doing a video experience on the Queens of Code, which has just been left out for far too long. We're in the process of recording many of the queens. We can't do all of them. We had to kind of had a tough kind of come to Jesus moment where we said, we need to have about 7 or 8 or 9 of them. And we're going to cut that together. That's going to be a film that's going to go along with the computers, the computer revolution. We are also working with NASA. I'm working with the Goddard Space Center with the NASA people to create a film on space encryption, where there's a possibility of us getting talking heads of everybody from a deputy administrator of NASA to former astronauts talking about encryption in space. And we're going to have all the amazing NASA footage because they're going to be editing and producing this for us. So that is going to be in that information assurance where the space area was to begin with. But we have a 98-inch TV now that provided by NSA that we're going to have some of this extraordinary space footage, plus talking about some advanced topics that we can't talk about. One of the great things that working with NASA is allowing us to do is that we can talk about modern encryption systems like quantum computing and point-to-point laser communications that NSA will not allow us to talk about. When it's NASA doing it, it's okay because their stuff is completely declassified. So they can allow us to be much more modern and showing the public what some of this modern communication encryption systems are. So that's just a brief overview of what we're doing. I'm happy to answer any questions. There's not a lot to show, unfortunately, right? We just don't have any infrastructure. There are renderings, there are things the graphics team have done, but they just really, I don't want to lead you off in the wrong direction because they're not perfect. They're kind of working models. But we're hoping that, when we get back in the building, we'll be able to have you guys come through, not only the beta test it, but anyone who has a strong back, we'd love to have you come help us put the museum back together because we have a staff of 7 and we have 2 months to put a museum back together. And in some cases, it's just Windexing glass. So if anyone wants to volunteer to do that, once we get back in the building, we'd love to have all you guys. Any questions, you can certainly send them to the chat and I'll hand this back to Laura, unless anyone wants to pop in with any questions.
I just have a question about,
Yep.
can you discuss any museum foundation plans for National Vigilance Park?
So any museum foundation, I don't know anything about the foundation plans. That's a Laura question. I can tell you about museum plans. So right now we are in limbo when it comes to anything with the aircraft. Mainly because of we don't have the personnel on staff to maintain anything like a C-130, but we want to allow for the possibility of that in the future. We're busily trying to get this museum put back together. As far as the aircraft are concerned, they're still on NSA property. They're still on loan to us. We're just having conversations about what we can possibly do with them. One of the future plans, we got on phase 3, phase 4, whenever we get the money, is to pave over the swimming pool. Well, if you want to call it that, the cesspool that used to be the swimming pool, and to get rid of the fencing around it and to create a nice outside platform where we can not only put potentially aircraft, but also large artifacts. We have a series. We have a handful of large artifacts out at Dorsey Road that we can't put inside the museum as it just doesn't fit. And some of them are very modern, and some of them are modern to the point of Iraq, Afghanistan period, to where we can show some really interesting art objects that just don't fit inside the museum. So it is on our wish list. It's on our wish list to pave over the pool and to potentially create a space where we could have outdoor exhibits. We're just not in that frame of mind quite yet. Because we have a building to put back together. These are not things that are going to go away. The foundation certainly has plans in mind, I believe, but you have to ask them about those things. But we're happy to have that conversation moving forward. Yep. Yep.
Okay. I'll add to that.
All right. Let me kick it back to Laura.
Laura, maybe I'll get this working again. Way to do this. It's just figured out how to do it. Okay. All right. So a couple things back to the Vigilance Park. So as a reminder, the Vigilance Park will be incorporated into the new museum and the whole new CCEI when that is built. So that is all part of the plan for the long term, and it will include a guardrail. We're looking for a new C-130, RC-130. We're working with the Air Force on that. And there's also going to include the tail of the former C-130, the C-130 that was at the original Vigilance Park. They'll be incorporated into that as well. So there are some plans for that. A couple other things. There were things that Mark brought up that I'll also address. he talked about with the Gula grant who we were working with. So one of those was, that was Partners in Care, is the local senior organization that we are going to work with in the Gula grant. And then the school that we had talked about was Robert Frost Middle School in Rockville. And that was the school. So just to fill in some of the blanks for Mark. And so, all right. Now, this is now time, we're at a close. So we ran fast. I didn't know how long this would take. So we ran a little quick. If anybody has any questions, speak now or put it in the chat. Or otherwise, we will be closing the meeting. So in the meantime, thank you all for participating today. Really happy to have had everybody join us, and thank you for your patience as we work through virtual versus non-virtual. And next year in May, when this is all behind us, we'll be we'll be in a much better place, I'm sure. Okay. Oh, somebody else put it. You saw that in there. I saw that in the news yesterday. By the one more party thought. I was watching the thing about the space launch yesterday, and make sure everybody realized that NSA, Kevin Power's daughter, was on that flight, which is really kind of cool, right? And so anyway, she was the astronaut, the female astronaut on the flight. Anyway, anything else that come before this? If not, thank you all, and we will close. I will make the slides available to everybody, and we'll put them out on the site, and as well as the recording.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.